Good morning, everyone. I am so excited to be here with you today and to share a little bit about my journey and Coactive's journey and really talk about how you go from a journeyman to a master. So first, I love computers. You know, as a kid, I love science and technology. I was glued to the science and discovery channels growing up, and I love learning how things were made. So when my brother helped me build my first computer, it was, a mind-blowing moment for me. And a monumental moment for me. I was a gamer, so I was able to play all of these kind of favorite video games that I had dreamed of. And once I learned how to program, both starting off with web development and then moving on to languages like C++, it made me realize something so amazing that with a computer and an internet connection, you can create something that will impact the lives of thousands, millions, and now billions of people around the world. Which was mind-blowing for me because, I never imagined that someone like me could actually go and do something that would be able to impact the lives of so many people. And now, I know what you're thinking. Melissa just gave a great introduction, and this guy that went to, MIT and Stanford, he should be able to have an impact. But in actuality, I came from a super humble background. And I'll spare you the whole TED Talk and give you the Spark Notes. But this is actually the student registration form when I first went to elementary school, and it serves as kind of a high-level bullet points in my life. So I was actually born while my mom was in prison at Monmouth County Correctional Facility, and my father left before I was born. I still don't even know his name, and in this registration form, my mom didn't even know his name. She entered in Rafael Sanchez ? So I was immediately put into foster care, and then I was adopted by my maternal grandparents. Now, they had big hearts for adopting me and my siblings, but they didn't have much left to give us. So we grew up on my grandparents' Social Security as well as welfare. And after a year in prison, my mom's charges were eventually dismissed, and she was released. And my grandparents, having big hearts, they let her come live with us. But during that time that she was in prison, she was diagnosed with mental illness and struggled with that for the rest of her life. So over the 20-some years that we lived in the house where I grew up in, we racked up something like 65 police reports. So growing up, my childhood, my home was in chaos, a constant source of chaos, and computers and school were an escape for me. And I didn't go to some crazy high school or anything like that. I went to a poor public high school in New Jersey. We were ranked 300 out of 322 schools for the state. But I saw that as my best opportunity to get out, and I had a passion for learning and for computer science and for studying. So I worked really, really hard through my time in high school and became the first student from my high school to ever go to MIT. And MIT for me was this kind of transformational period in time. A weight was lifted off of my shoulders. I actually was able to kind of afford a few of the things I need and be able to focus, escape some of the chaos, and be able to really focus on my studies. And that enabled me to not just go to MIT, but actually to be able to succeed there. I graduated with my bachelor's with a 4.9 out of 5.0 GPA. I became the president of the Honor Society for Electrical Engineering and Computer Science. And I stayed on to do my Master's of Engineering at MIT, where I earned a 5.0 GPA. And during that time, the work that I was doing, I had an amazing, amazing research advisor, Isaac Schwung, who saw the work that I was doing, and he pulled me aside one day and he said, Cody, you should really go and do a PhD. And if money is an issue, I'll pay for you to apply to 4 schools. And with that, I not only applied to Stanford, but I got in. And it was such a magical moment in time because I started my PhD back in 2016. And it was amazing to see the advances that happened in AI and to actually play a part in actually pushing the field forward. I helped create MLPerf, which became the industry standard benchmark for high-performance deep learning, with companies around the world supporting and leveraging that to figure out what's the best system and chips in order to train and build machine learning models. I was instrumental in helping form the data-centric AI movement. I co-organized the first data-centric AI workshop with data-centric AI workshop at Neurots with Andrew Ng and folks from Google and Meta. I helped create the MLPerf benchmark, which is a benchmark for data-centric AI, and helped form the data-centric machine learning research community to bring researchers together to think about how do we go from model-centric AI development to data-centric. And then, now to go in this other kind of chapter and starting Coactive and to be able to productionize AI. It's been an incredible and challenging journey over the past 3 years. At Coactive, we say that it's the hardest job you'll love. But it's been so amazing to see just the kind of tremendous amount of progress as with Coactive, we create a platform that makes it easy to search and analyze visual content to enable this next wave of intelligent applications. And it's surreal to think about the fact that I went from being born in prison to getting my PhD and then starting a venture-backed company. And that actually I was able to create something that was able to impact the lives of thousands and millions of people. Now, it took a little bit more than a computer and an internet connection to do that. But just the entire journey of doing that I feel so grateful and has blown my mind. And in thinking about this talk today and thinking about speaking to all of you as you enter into the field of AI, I was reflecting and trying to think of, what are kind of like the most practical tips that I can give. And in thinking about it really long and hard, I don't think that there's anything particularly special that I did. There's no kind of, I read all of the productivity books and all the blogs and things like that. But at the end of the day, I think ultimately what was critical to me being successful is just a tremendous amount of hard work and perseverance to get through, the thick and thin. I know that many of you are entering in the job market as there's kind of crazy things that are happening at a macro level, but passion and perseverance really can help you go a far way. But one thing that was really surprising to me actually was, and it was surprising to me at every step of the journey and starting Coactive, is that you kind of go on this, it feels like you're taking a leap of faith, like a trust fall. But it's amazing to see the amount of encouragement and kindness that people will extend to you in the world. And thinking about my journey in computer science and AI, there was this kind of one moment, I got this book, The Pragmatic Programmer, From Journeyman to Masters as a gift. And in that, the person left me a little note. They said, "Cody, I'm in no place to give you advice, but I want to share my favorite quote with you. It's by Nelson Mandela, and it goes, 'It always seems impossible until it's done. Hope to see you do the impossible things next time I run into you.'" And the kindness of giving that book and the encouragement, this was my junior year at MIT. Before I had gone on to do my PhD, before I had even graduated, before I had started the company. And it made me realize that it was possible. And then reflecting on kind of like the two characteristics, that I think were critical in order for doing the impossible, when I reflect on my journey, was, a sense of naive optimism and endless positivity. And that's played out kind of at multiple points in my life. I think people often overestimate what they can do in 1 year and underestimate what they can do in 5. And I experienced that firsthand. When I first got to MIT, I'll never forget lying in like this extended twin-size bed. For the folks that are seeing me virtually, I'm 6'4", so my feet are dangling over the sides. And staring up at the ceiling thinking, what have I gotten myself into? I'm competing with the best people in the world in computer science. how am I going to do it? How is someone like me that came from the middle of nowhere in New Jersey going to be able to compete with folks and graduate? I just wanted to, do well in school and things like that. But when you reflect on the 5-year journey, there was a lot of ups and downs as I kind of went through it. In the third year of my undergrad degree, I thought that I was going to actually have to drop out because there were so much things going on in my personal life with my family back home. But I stuck with it, and in those 5 years, I ended up graduating, becoming the president of my honor society, and going on to Stanford for my PhD. And then at Stanford, the same thing happened all over again. I went through this whole process of, I got into the PhD program. My first year, I was like, I want to crush it. I want to publish 3 conference papers and just hit the ground running. I got 0 papers published in that first year. And in fact, going into my third year of my PhD, I still had 0 papers published. And it was kind of this dark tunnel. I was like, oh man, I am not good at this. What am I doing? And I thought about dropping out of the PhD in that moment. But, I decided to stick with it. I knew that I had kind of been told a lie, actually, by my master's advisor. He told me that the hard part about the PhD was getting in. And just because you got in, it didn't mean that you have to go. And just because you go, it didn't mean that you have to finish. But knowing me and the passion and perseverance I had, of course I had to finish, and I kept going. And to my surprise, in my 4th year of my PhD, I went from 0 papers published to 4 papers published, and being able to graduate at the end of that year. And then at the end of the 5 years, actually being able to be a part of the data-centric AI movement, to be a part of creating MLPerf, and be a part of creating MLCommons, which have helped accelerate the field. And now with Coactive, I'm going through that 5-year journey again. It's kind of a massive leap, and kind of a hard path. I could have gone and worked at a big tech company or been a researcher, a faculty member. Harvard even reached out to me to point my attention to a tenure track CS position. But I decided to go and take this crazy leap and start a company, and all because of kind of a simple observation. That data is changing. When we first think about kind of what happened in the big data movement, kind of started 10 years ago, with companies like Databricks and Snowflake, founded in 2012 and 2013, we really thought about kind of big data in terms of structured data. And the example I always like to use is if you were thinking about a restaurant. I love Mama's Fish House in Maui, and if you think about it from a tabular perspective, you might get the name of the restaurant and a star rating, and then some other kind of details there. That's a pretty good signal, 5 stars. That's I'm excited about the restaurant. Then once we think about, text, now we see, Mama's Fish House is a rare establishment where the hype actually meets actuality. From the moment you enter the restaurant, you're met with exceptional service, ambiance, and views. Our table looked out towards the private beach, ideal to enjoy our meal. That's better, You get much more context, much more information as we go to this richer form of data. And finally, when you think about the actual visual aspect of it, you actually can see, the amazing food, that private beach in front of you, and get additional context and additional information. And now we have massive amounts of content that are being generated, and data is fundamentally shifting to that. And it all goes back to actually an old idea and an old phrase from Bill Gates, where he said, "Content is king." In 1996, he predicted that the real money on the internet was going to be made in content, just as it was during the broadcasting era, and that the real long-term winners were going to be the people that were able to effectively leverage their content to deliver information and entertainment. And fast forward to today, those predictions have come true, and the king is here. 80% of internet traffic today is video data, and it's predicted that by 2025, 80% of data worldwide is going to be unstructured data, such as video and audio files. And this prediction was made before the recent wave of generative AI, which has dramatically lowered the barrier to being able to create content. So if it was a tidal wave before, it's a tsunami now. And all of that content influences our everyday life. Nearly 80% of people say that user-generated content impacts their decision to make a purchase. So it's really not a question of if or when content's going to be king. The real question that organizations and companies are asking is, what type of king is your content? What type of king is your content? And this is where the gap really emerges, everyone wants to have kind of that legendary king, that King Arthur, where their content lifts sales and engagement by delivering the right piece of content to the right person at the right time. Allows them to answer questions about consumer behavior and illuminate trends. And I was able to see this firsthand from working at places like Meta, Google, Pinterest, and things like that, how it's possible, how intelligent applications could drive so much value for businesses. But what I also saw was the tremendous amount of resources that were needed in order to do that. Both in terms of human resources, like the folks that are in this room today, as well as the computational resources to actually make these models and train them from scratch. So instead, there's a huge gap between the leading organizations in the world and everyone else. And they have their content is closer to something like a King Henry. It's a lazy king, where all this content, all this data sits underutilized in cloud storage for serving or archived in backups, effectively a tax on the organization, because it costs a small fortune to store this data just because of the sheer volume that image, audio, and video data takes. But the key to closing that gap, is what we've seen in this past year. If we think that content is king, AI is the queen. AI is the key to unlocking the value from content at scale. And as we've seen in this past year, we've had kind of massive advances in actually making that possible. However, royal marriages, like any marriages, are not easy. So marrying together content, data, and AI is a really, really difficult problem, which is why all of you that are joining the workforce today are so critical to making that happen. Because there's a number of challenges that the industry, that enterprises still face in order to unlock this data. And these are opportunities for you to actually come in, leverage your expertise, and have an impact. First, when we think about unstructured text and visual data, it's orders of magnitude larger than big data today. To put that into perspective, if you had 10 million rows of tabular data, that's around 40 megabytes. That's like the surface area of Lake Tahoe, let's say. If you have 10 million documents, like 10 million pages from Wikipedia, that's 40 gigabytes. That's 3 orders of magnitude. That's like going from the surface area of Lake Tahoe to the Caspian Sea. And when you think about 10 million images, like looking at the Open Images data set, that's about 20 terabytes. That's another 3 orders of magnitude. That's like going from, now we're talking the Pacific Ocean, the surface area of the Pacific Ocean. And when we think about the tools that we have today, it's kind of like having a rowboat or a canoe. It'll get you across a lake. But if you told me that to cross the Pacific Ocean in a rowboat, I would think that you're crazy, and I would tell you that you need a bigger boat. And all the folks here today can be a part of building that bigger boat and being able to unlock the treasure that's hidden in this massive ocean of unstructured data that's out there. In the interest of time, I'll skip through some of the other slides and some of the other points so we have time for Q&A. But just really quickly, when we think about kind of the data that's out there, on one side, we have kind of the systems component of intelligent applications, but data is also really critical. And unfortunately, data often skews to common examples, leaving the long tail behind. And the figure here, you see that kind of the wide variety of real-day life based off of geographic and socioeconomic status if we just look at what is considered an oven in someone's home. And when we took machine learning models and we actually applied it to that data, we saw that they actually performed very poorly on the lowest kind of quartiles, the lowest income quartiles. But with careful fine-tuning and data processing, we can actually balance that out and rise all boats and close the gap between the lowest income quartiles and the highest income quartiles. Also, when we think about the massive amount of tooling that's out there, there's a tremendous amount of tools to use for actually, solving these problems, but actually putting it together, figuring out the right tools is hard. If you look at this, kind of diagram of everything out there, if you're like me, your face is probably melting. And in the interest of time, I'll skip some of the lessons, but one thing, we're here at the Vector Institute, and one of the kind of biggest things that I think has happened in the past few years that very few people have kind of talked about or we're just now seeing is that, embeddings kind of, and vector embeddings, have created this kind of massive decoupling. They effectively can cache computation and decouple the most expensive part of deep learning from all the downstream tasks that we want to do. The representations of these models can be cached in an embedding, and decoupling that, can decouple that because we have the exact same compute through this foundation model. We can catch that, we can store the embeddings, then we can create these task-specific models, which help us overcome the limitations of compute, democratize AI, and make it highly performant. And it's kind of crazy, when in 2021 when we started Coactive and I talked to VCs, they were like, embedding vectors, like what are you talking about? Who cares about embeddings? And as we've seen over the past 3 years, that's fundamentally changed. And something that people didn't even know what it was called has now become something that's massive when we think about vector databases, when we think about techniques like RAG that have now have had such widespread kind of adoption and impact to make this next wave of intelligent applications. I'll skip all of this, and I'll just kind of talk very quickly about, for any of you that are thinking about starting a company and things like that, Coactive started actually with a simple idea. This was a piece of paper that where my co-founder and we drew out the kind of basic architecture for Coactive. I was in the blue, he was in the red. Combining kind of all of these things together in order to create a system. We started with an idea. The next big thing is finding the right people, building the right team. So it started out with Will and I. We created kind of the logo, this checkered logo, and the name Coactive. It still lives on in my shoes today. And Coactive means to work together. And fundamentally, our grand vision is to help humans and machines work together. Our mission is to unlock the remaining 80% of enterprise data. But in addition to the idea and the people, culture is really critical. When you think about where you're going in your career, the people that you surround yourself around in your daily interactions is going to define kind of your life. You're going to spend a significant part of your life working alongside these folks, being a part of this culture. And it can either be something that's an afterthought or something that's like a strategic advantage. So thinking about what's the culture, what are the people that you want to be surrounded by is a critical part as you think about kind of your journey in your career. And it's critical to why Coactive has been successful. And why we've been able to create an amazing product that allows you to kind of quickly search, filter, and analyze visual content. With that, I'll end and thank you all for the time today. And I'll forget, my team would be mad at me if I didn't say this, but we are hiring. So if you're looking, let us know. We have offices in California and Canada. Thank you. Should we skip Q&A?
No, let's maybe take 2 questions. We're going to start with an online question at the back.
Thank you so much.
How are we doing? Just while we're getting our online question, is there a question in the room?
Yes, there's a question.
So why don't we take the question in the room first and then go to, oh, you ready, Serene?
Yeah, we're ready. Okay,
Fantastic.
the first question is, what would be your advice to someone from a non-AI/ML background, but from an engineering background to study AI/ML? There is so much out there that it's overwhelming. Asking this question as a potential student.
So first off, I just want to say that engineering is like when I think about this kind of next wave of intelligent applications, I think it's like a 3-legged stool. It's about AI, data, and systems. And there's a lot of focus on the AI component of this stool. But the data and systems piece, the traditional software engineering stuff, is as critical now as it has ever been. This book, The Pragmatic Programmer, is a software engineering book. It was kind of the foundation for me getting into computer science, and I still think about this today as we build this next wave of intelligent applications. So I want to say first off that, traditional software engineering is still super valuable in AI. You have kind of a tremendous amount of kind of value to bring to AI companies in this the field and advancement, today. When I think about, and as a result of that, when I think about learning, getting started, getting involved and being around, surrounding yourself by people that are, thinking about AI can be one great step, where you're working on AI projects and you're actually building software around it, because we need, full stack engineers, we need, systems engineers in general. When I think about kind of content out there, there's a number of great courses that are out there for introductory stuff. Andrew Ng has a lot of courses on Coursera that are great. And then, of course, there's a lot of great courses through Stanford to look at. But I think, really kind of getting started, working on a project and, going through courses along the side is the best way to learn, the best way to kind of really understand how AI can create applications.
And one question in the room.
So first of all, thank you, Cody. It was a wonderful presentation. I really enjoyed it, and it was really inspiring. One question that I had was, if you were to say one or two actions that you believe had the most impact in your career, what would they be? Because based on the story that you told us, it was truly amazing, and I'm really curious to know. Thank you.
If there was one thing that, first off, thank you. It was such a great question. One thing that I think has been super useful throughout my entire kind of life and career is being curious and asking questions. Whether that be, in classes or just people that you meet, and generally being curious about the folks that are around you. And reaching out to people that are, experts in the field. As I mentioned, one of the biggest and the most pleasant surprises that I had throughout my entire journey is how kind and encouraging and supportive people are. So just having the curiosity and the courage to ask questions, to take advantage of that collective wisdom, is probably the single most impactful thing that I've done in my career that's actionable today. Thank you.